and welcome back to Book and Page. We're continuing on with The Hobbit, and we're actually on to Chapter 13, Not at Home. Which is referring to the dragon. I think the dwarves think they're finally at home. Okay, quick summary first, and then on to me blabbing at the camera for a while. Okay, so the company, at this point in time, the dragons brought down the tunnel and disappeared, so they're sitting inside the tunnel, and they realize they're stuck, they can't go back out, and they're waiting, and they're listening for Smaug, but there's been a long time, and they haven't heard anything, and Bilbo finally talks them into following him down the tunnel, because as he says, third time pays for all. So they follow him down the tunnel, but Bilbo is leading, and trips out of the tunnel and realizes there's no dragon. Somebody bring me a light. And it takes some convincing, but finally we get some lit torches, or a lit torch that Bilbo takes, and Bilbo heads out onto the treasure hill to explore further when he finds the Arkenstone and pockets it without telling the dwarves he's found it. Now he ends up tripping and the light goes out, and so the dwarves have to light some more torches and come after him, and deciding that the dragon's not there and treasure is, oh my god, treasure. The dwarves are suddenly okay and they want to explore everything, touch shiny things. Bilbo gets weary of this pretty quickly. He's not a big shiny things person. So he's just like, guys, maybe we should, like, figure a way out. Fresh air would be good, and some food. And also, where's the dragon? So all of the dwarves are just like, okay, yeah, I understand those points. And Thorin leads them through the mountain to the front gate. And they're like, yay, we're outside. Where do we go from here? And Balin suggests they head for a guard tower, which is about a 5-hour walk from there. Which they make, and then the trip leaves them exhausted, so we have them going to sleep at the end of the chapter. I mean, not a super, like, action-packed chapter. There was a whole lot of walking, and a whole lot of, oh my god, shiny things! But despite the lack of, like, action, there are some things that we can talk about in here. And I think one of the first things we have to address is returning to that moral question about Bilbo and stealing things. Because we now have Bilbo pick up the Arkenstone and put it in his pocket without telling the dwarves that he's found it. And this is like the one thing they've named that they're just like, yeah, this is something really important to us. And Bilbo's just like, what is the nasty hobbits got in his pockets? A magic ring, that's the one ring, and the Arkenstone. I also want to know, like, physically how big is this thing, and how big are Bilbo's pockets, that he is effectively carrying this thing around, and the dwarves aren't noticing. Like, they literally give him stuff to wear. Like this chainmail shirt. And they haven't noticed that he's got, like, a big stone in his pocket? What have you got in your pocket? Or is that the Arkenstone, or are you just glad to see me? I'm sorry. I'm gonna stop with the pocket jokes. Yeah, because it as much as I want to joke about it, it is still this moral question. And Bilbo is aware of it. He actually, like, tries to justify his taking of the stone at the time that he takes it. Like, he's saying to himself, well, they said I could pick my own 14th share. Except in saying that, he is acutely aware that the Arkenstone is likely, like, the one thing that is not supposed to be included in that. Because Thorin has already mentioned trying to find this, like, he is deeply aware this is off limits. I'm gonna take it anyways. And his awareness of that decision makes him even more uncomfortable. So, if you know it's morally wrong, why do you do it? And I get the feeling that's like a question we all sort of ask ourselves at one point or another. I know I shouldn't eat this piece of cake because I said Susan can have it. But the cake is really good. And in fact, this is something that I've been working over partially in my master's thesis. Aristotle has the argument that you can have the knowledge that what you're doing is wrong and still do it anyways because you lack self-restraint. That's the translated term, at least, that I'm aware of, used for that. And how Aristotle explains it, I'm really bad at this, is you can have particular knowledge and universal knowledge. And universal knowledge, again, the big things like questions of truth and things like that. And the moral questions come into those universal knowledges. So things like stealing is wrong, killing is wrong, eating unhealthily is wrong. And eating unhealthily is actually the example that Aristotle uses. Sweet things are bad for you. But you also have other universal knowledges, like sweet things taste good. And both of those are true. You eat too many sweet things, it's bad for you. But sweet things taste really good. For a lot of people, I recognize some people don't have sweet teeth. I have a mouthful of sweet teeth. So, what happens when you have these two knowledge choices is you pick the one that's corresponding to your desire at that moment. Do I want to be healthy because I know it leads to other good things? Or do I want to satisfy my desire to eat something sweet right at this moment, even though eventually it will lead to negative things? And that's lacking self-restraint. If you can't take the stiff upper lip approach for the good choices later, and you go for your desire now, then you lack self-restraint. You are picking the one that you know is wrong in the long term, but satisfies you now. So, can we say this is what's happening with Bilbo? It's complicated. It is really complicated, because we want to say, yeah, it is. Because he knows stealing is wrong, but the Arkenstone is pretty, and I want it. And he goes for what's going to deal with his desire now, which is taking the Arkenstone. Even though that's stealing from my friends, and that's going to cause negative consequences. Except, it's really weird. There's two moments in this chapter that complicate that question. Because you want to be able to say, Bilbo, you're wrong. But the dwarves do it too. Once the dwarves are comfortable enough being here, all of them are picking things up. They're sticking it in their pockets. And what they can't take with them, they have to let go, but they're sad about it. They want to keep all of these things. And there's no consequence to that. Which is to say that Bilbo might be able to justify the legitimization of his actions because of everyone else's actions. Maybe taking things in this moment is not wrong because that is what is expected of us. We get to pick our own shares. But that still doesn't answer that issue of being aware that the Arkenstone is meant to be separate and not meant to be included in here. It wouldn't be wrong if Bilbo had selected any other jewel except the Arkenstone. But the second moment complicates this even further, and it wipes all of this away. And I'm going to read it to you quickly. Okay. So Bilbo has dropped, at this point, Bilbo's dropped his torch, and the dwarves have finally come to find him and meet him coming back. And so he assures them only a bat and a dropped torch, nothing worse, he said in answer to their questions. Though they were much relieved, they were inclined to be grumpy at being frightened for nothing. But what they would have said if he had told them at that moment about the Arkenstone, I don't know. The mere fleeting glimpses of treasure which they had caught as they went along had rekindled all the fire of their dwarvish hearts, and when the heart of a dwarf, even the most respectable, is wakened by gold and by jewels, he grows suddenly bold, and he may become fierce. Hey Bilbo, if you mention the Arkenstone now, you might have gotten murdered! What? What? Man, it becomes hard to be like, stealing is wrong, and not doing it will lead to positive consequences when the when the author tells you, yeah, that might have led to negative consequences. They might have freaked out if you had told them about the Arkenstone right then. Even if you were legit, like, I found this as we were going, here you go. It's suddenly like, well, why did you take it in the first place? So what are we supposed to take from this? Literally, like, stealing is wrong, and you shouldn't steal if it leads to positive consequences, but you should steal and keep quiet about it if it leads to negative ones. What moral quandary have we hit this time? Yes. If it leads to good things, it's a good moral action. If it leads to bad ones, it's a bad moral action. Is that what we're being told here? I don't even know. That doesn't even make it clear, because there is a notable change in voice. This isn't Bilbo's thought process at the moment. This is the narrator's thought process, which, I mean, we can say is Tolkien, but Tolkien says that he's actually translating this from a different book. So maybe that narration's there as well. But this is somebody who's reflecting on the situation, not somebody in the situation at the moment. So this is someone looking back on the whole issue and saying, it could have gone really badly here. Not somebody in the situation going, I can make the moral correct decision here. Bilbo can't see the outcomes on either end. It's only reflecting back that we see there might be negative outcomes for him being honest here. So we can't justify Bilbo in his decision, because all of his attempts to justify it, again, don't lead to a definitive answer either way. Nor does this one either. Like Tolkien says, I don't know. It might have gone poorly, but it might not have. So, do you just do what you want because you never know what the outcome's honestly going to be? That's probably not a moral system we all want to live by. Like, that's not going to get us anyplace. But cracks are starting to show. Maybe Bilbo did pick up on those cracks. Because we've got this issue of gold sickness coming in. Because we've been told, even just glimpses of it, something's going on in the dwarves' heads and hearts here, and something's being stirred up. So we should address that as well. Because it's not just Bilbo we need to think about here, but also the dwarves' own actions in these moments. Like I said, can we justify Bilbo's taking of the Arkenstone? Because the dwarves take things as well. It's weird with how the dwarves act in this moment. Because, like I said, they're stuffing their pockets full of everything. And when they can't take something with them, it's almost like they're mourning it. They let it run through their fingers and they sigh over it. It's really melodramatic if you think about it. Like, could you just imagine watching 13 people going, huh, huh, and like honest to God being affected by this, not just playing at it. It's gotta like just send creepy crawlies up your back. But again, can we use this to justify Bilbo not mentioning the Arkenstone? Well, he had opportunity to mention it before he got to the point of dwarves sighing over things they can't take with them. But we also have moments that further contradict the idea that gold sickness is all-powerful and all-consuming. For one, it doesn't seem to affect all the dwarves equally. Fili and Kili notably actually find harps and sit down and play the harps. They're there for the music, and that's what's more attractive to them than even the gold. Which I think says a lot more about Fili and Kili than it necessarily says about anybody else. But it should be something we bring up, because they're not sighing over the gold. They're quite happily playing the music. But Tolkien gives contradictory descriptions of this moment. Because what he actually says is that the other dwarves, the older dwarves, were more practical. Because they went for things that they could put in their pockets and take with them. Well, practical, I think, in that sense, again, is if we are basing society and its decisions around material things, rather than a community notion. Because Fili and Kili are digging into that community notion of music. This is the music returning that failed several chapters ago. And they're bringing it back. This should be a celebration moment where the music returns. But if you base your concept of society and what's good for society around material things, then yes, you'd say that they weren't practical because they weren't grabbing and stuffing their pockets. But we're also told that the reason why the harps are perfectly fine and not affected and still in fact tuned is because Smaug wasn't attracted to them. Dragons have no use for music, and so didn't bother with the harps. There is a comparison there between the dwarves and the dragon that we need to acknowledge. And the fact that Fili and Kili just want to play some music is really meaningful. And additionally, you can break people out of gold sickness. Bilbo finally says, "Hey Thorin, how about some fresh air and some food? Like, in all seriousness, I think this place is going a little screwy. Why don't we take a break? Why don't we just take a walk?" And they do that. Thorin listens to him and calls the other dwarves away, and they walk through the kingdom out of the front gate, and then we actually get more input from the other dwarves. They're sort of waking up here. Balin chimes in, and Dori chimes in, and they end up going to Raven Hill, to the Watchtower, because there seems to be acknowledgement among the dwarves, at least, that they need some distance here. Like, going to the Watchtower isn't useful for any other reason than the fresh air has made them realize something just happened, and we need some distance. And Bilbo is still not mentioning the Arkenstone. This is a children's book, and here I am with moral quandaries and Aristotle. Was not expecting Aristotle today, but yeah, that just happened. So, with that said, I'm going to keep reading, and I hope you do too. See you next time.